Welcome to Mindful School Marketing, your go-to podcast for personal and professional growth.
We're school marketers, business owners, and moms passionate about connecting other school professionals with tools and strategies for success.
We love solving problems, exploring new ideas, and thinking outside the box. Let's transform your school and life starting right now. Transform your school's admissions and marketing with Inquiry Tracker, the ultimate solution for managing inquiries seamlessly. Discover how you can make your admissions process more efficient and effective with this leading solution. Welcome to Mindful School Marketing. I'm Aubrey Bursch.
And I'm Tara Clays. Today we're joined by Christina Dotchin. As Vice President of Member Relations, Christina Dotchin oversees Enrollment Management Association's membership, business development, professional development, marketing, and communications teams, providing programs and resources for over 1,200 independent schools and over 20,000 members. With over 20 years in the education sector, Christina is passionate about EMA's transformative work to support enrollment professionals, school leaders, community-based organizations, students, and families. As an industry thought leader, Christina has presented at numerous regional, national, and global conferences and events. She is also the host of EMA's Enrollment Spectrum podcast. Welcome, Christina. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tara and Aubrey. It's wonderful to be here. I appreciate you all having me on the show.
Yes, Christina, we're so excited. I know we had some back and forth with scheduling, but we're here and we're so excited to talk to you today about this topic. But before we dive in, I'd love for you to share with our audience a little bit more about your role at EMA and the work that EMA does to support independent schools.
So as you mentioned in the intro, we do a lot with empowering school leaders by providing professional learning community, industry-leading data and research, which we're going to talk about probably a little bit today, and a full suite of enrollment tools. This includes the SSAT or secondary school admission test, character skills snapshot, standard application online. So a lot of what our team does, the member relations team, and everybody at EMA really, it's our vision is to champion transformational education journeys. And that's exactly what our members do every single day as independent school professionals. And so in our role, it's to really, and the member relations team is to support them. So as the Vice President of Member Relations, as you mentioned, I oversee the membership and business development teams. So a lot of that is where they are providing support to our members through their work in use of EMA's enrollment management tools, providing thought leadership. Most recently, that team just wrapped up a bit of a roadshow, if you will, doing our Enrollment Management Leadership Council spring seminars, which happened actually globally. And that was put on by our EMLC Council, which is our big volunteer group. We also have our global and recruitment fairs and agent events where we're connecting schools, enrollment offices with families overseas. So helping with those recruitment efforts. We have our professional development team, which is really in charge of our big annual conference, which had over 1,600 people last year in Boston. This year we're in Austin in September, so we're really excited about that. And then, of course, as you can imagine, with our marketing and communications team, they have their hands in just about everything. I don't think I need to tell you how much they do and how important they are, but also involved in things such as our member magazine, The Yield, EMA's podcasts, our new school search on admission.org, et cetera. But it's been an exciting year. In September of 2024, EMA and ERB, which is Education Records Bureau, we actually announced our intent to merge. So it has been quite a year. We are currently subject to closing customary conditions, but we expect formal approval by this summer. So one of the big milestones that actually just recently happened was the announcement and the official start of Mike Flanagan, who is the CEO of our new organization. So we're very excited about that. He brings, gosh, I think it's over 30 years of experience in nonprofit association and educational technology leadership to our new organization. So we're just thrilled about that. And we're thrilled to be merging with ERB to bring more expertise, data insights, professional tools, giving all of those things and bringing all of that to our membership and to families that we serve. So it's been quite a year.
It's an exciting time. We were chatting before we started recording about all the meetings and all the things involved with a merger like that and how it's happening, for great reasons. So congratulations to you and your whole team on that. Let's go ahead and dive in and start talking a little bit about the key reports that EMA releases each year. Can you give us an overview of some of the most recent reports and the insights that they provide?
Absolutely. As we look at where we're going with the merger, we're very excited to be continuing this work in creating more of these reports, gathering this data, and having that many more member schools and families where we are gathering this data from. So we're really excited about that opportunity. But currently, EMA has two flagship reports that folks should be aware of. One is our State of the Independent School Enrollment Industry survey and report, which we call SOTI for short. So SOTI. So I'll refer to it as that moving forward. But that provides a snapshot of the independent school enrollment management industry. And we do that every 3 years and allows us to take a closer look at enrollment trends within our industry. So our last report was released in 2023. That was our fourth edition of the report. And the next one is actually going to be coming this year. So we are about to send out the survey, which goes to the most senior enrollment leader at independent schools. And so we're going to be gathering that information, and we should have that report published, I would say, by winter of 2026. So that's one flagship report that, again, we do every 3 years. The second flagship report is the Ride to Independent Schools. And that's where last year we surveyed more than 3,000 families who went through the admission process. And this is really where we're trying to get at the heart of what drives families to consider, apply, and enroll in independent schools. So, as you can imagine, by comparing these results with previous RIDE reports every 3 years, it provides multi-layered perspectives and offers insights not only to enrollment leaders and admission professionals, but also, especially, I know this was really popular among marketing professionals in schools because it gives a lot of good insights there. And then this year, we have a bit of a blank slate. So every 3 years, we're kind of going, okay, what are we going to do this year? This is going to be interesting. And it's one of my favorites because it's really based on feedback from members as well as observations from our State of the Industry report, our Ride to Independent Schools report. And so what came out of that and what we ended up doing was we came out with a report titled An Independent School Education, Family Perceptions of Value and Affordability. So for this report, we surveyed more than 1,000 parents and caregivers in the summer of 2024 who were applying to independent schools, and they are currently either enrolled in independent schools or they enrolled in other options, of course. And this groundbreaking study offers large-scale analysis of how families across the socioeconomic spectrum perceive value and affordability of an independent school education. So what's interesting about this is it's of course written for enrollment leaders and enrollment professionals, but we also made sure that it was written with the audience of heads of schools, CFOs, senior leadership teams, boards of trustees in mind. And I have to say, of the reports that we have done, I have had so many heads of schools reaching out recently and saying, we want more copies. I want copies for my board. These are important discussions that we're going to be having this summer. So it's been really great to see that take off. And I want to thank Mission and Data, EMA's strategic data partner, for their partnership in creating the reports. And mention that for members, all three of these reports also come with interactive data dashboards that they can all access through our online community platform. So not only do you have access to the report, but also you're able to dive a little deeper into the data, which has been very well received by our members.
That's amazing. First of all, I'm someone who loves data. And I think when you're working in a school, having data at your fingertips, like this really comprehensive data that you all have put together, is so important because that's how you can like see what's out there and then make decisions based off data instead of the feelings. I like to come to a meeting and everyone's like, I feel like this is happening. I'm like, well, the feelings are great, but where's the data? So
Absolutely.
I'm so glad that EMA does this, and I'm really excited to kind of get your take on this next question, which is like, okay, so these reports came out, like this, especially this one you're just talking about. Like, what trends are you seeing emerge from that research, and how are they shaping the future of independent school enrollment, and maybe even leadership too?
Absolutely. And Aubrey, it's interesting, you make a very important point. We want members to be data informed as they're going into making decisions, not only within what's happening in the enrollment or admission office, but also giving data that can go back to senior leadership teams, to faculty, that can inform various aspects of that process. In terms of enrollment trends, and this is sort of big picture, and then maybe I'll get into some data. We know that we're in a shifting landscape. So when we think of some of the major trends impacting enrollment in our schools today, these are things such as shifting demographics, change in family expectations, which recently at our EMLC events, that was a big one that was flagged by a number of folks. Technology, the rise in competition. There are so many of these external forces, both big and small, and most out of our schools' control. And each one poses a unique challenge to the work of enrolling and retaining students. And so we know through data that we've seen at EMA, of course, there's great data from NAIS through their trend book and the DAZZLE program they have, where we're seeing that while we're seeing enrollment growth for a number of schools, we know that's not the same story for all schools, as there's also a number who are reporting enrollment declines. And a lot of that depends on so many things, such as geographic location. Are you a day school? Are you a boarding school? Are you a day boarding school? What is your enrollment size? Just thinking of the United States, specifically, yes, we know enrollment growth is happening, a big picture nationwide, but it's more heavily concentrated in the South right now. And when we look back at our State of the Industry report, which again, we will have an updated numbers to share this coming year, the number of schools identifying they received many more applications than available spots and managing an extensive wait list in most grades, that had jumped from about 12% in 2019 to 19% in 2023. And also, we saw a jump in those managing a small wait list, so seeing a similar increase. But in contrast, just over 2 of every 5 schools struggled to reach their goals, what we were finding from that report. So it's interesting to see those pieces and how, again, it's sort of not the same story for every school. And there are various challenges in both scenarios. I mean, if I was part of a meeting recently with one enrollment leader who had greatly exceeded enrollment numbers, net tuition numbers that they had set for the year, but they're facing other challenges. And yet we have some schools that are still working hard through the summer to try to meet those goals. So I think that's sort of one piece there. And in terms of the perceptions of value and affordability report, I would say one of the big pieces to come out of that I think may be helpful for folks to know is this idea that families theoretically want to pay less, but are unwilling to sacrifice in key areas. So overwhelmingly, the majority of incoming independent school parents are unwilling to consider less expensive options if they believe they will be sacrificing quality in the areas they value most. That is what we found from our data. And this, of course, can be challenging because when our schools are considering things, pricing options, they're looking at potential tuition resets, this has various implications for that. But one of the key data points to come out of this section that I will share is 61% of parents said they were not willing to pursue a school with a lesser quality offering in any of their top 3 factors. And these are top three factors they identified that they could select from when they were considering schools. So they would not consider a school with a lesser quality offering in any of those top 3 factors at any level of cost savings. And this goes for families who both enrolled in independent schools and also ended up not enrolling in independent schools. So even when families then were considering a school with a lesser quality option in their top factors, or what they perceive to be a lesser quality option in their top factors, data suggests from our report that these cost reductions would have to be substantial. And that's often greater than 10% or 25% savings, which for a lot of schools, I mean, can you imagine cutting that out of your budget? That would have a big implication there. So those were some interesting things that came out of recent reports. I think that's especially helpful as schools are starting to look at, where are things headed in terms of enrollment? How are family expectations changing? What are their perceptions of value and affordability at our schools? So that's been interesting for us to dive into. And I will say, especially with this latest report, a number of follow-up questions from members, and a lot of them are taking that into their summer retreats, which is interesting.
So much interesting data there. I'm diving in. That's a pretty significant jump, 12 to 19%. That's, that's a significant. So now that we have, highlighted some key data points that you've noticed in your recent reports, how would you recommend that school leaders and admission teams can apply this data to improve their enrollment strategies?
I would say one great resource that we point to a lot would be EMA's Strategic Enrollment Management Spectrum. And while I don't have a visual, if folks go to enrollment.org, you can actually find that visual that I'm talking about as you're listening to this. It basically defines what we mean by enrollment management. It shows, and because you're not seeing it in front of you, what it does, it shows these 8 categories or levers on this spectrum that are factors independent school leaders can control and that drive sustainable enrollment. So when you think a moment ago, I was talking about all these things that are external factors we can't control. This kind of helps us start to sort through some of those things. What can we control and what can we do? And these levers, again, you're not seeing it here, but for those, if you're watching the video, I'll kind of say that we have sort of an outer band on the spectrum and then a core band on that spectrum. So there are these 2 parts. The inner 3 levers that we have represents the most immediate work of the enrollment leader and their direct partners. So for example, one of those levers is marketing and recruitment of new families. So clearly that's meant for that senior enrollment leader and also that perhaps that director of marketing and communications. They've got to be working in tandem in that partnership to really make that work. Then we have these outer 5 levers that are critical to the enrollment health of the school, yet really they lie almost entirely outside of the direct control of the enrollment leader. And one of those levers is family engagement and retention. And notice that retention, I always make a point, notice that retention is on there. That is something that our enrollment leaders do not have much control over. And sometimes I have found that yet they are put in charge of all retention efforts. So that's something to be aware of. So I think that strategic enrollment management spectrum is very helpful. I would say that if you are going to get into that, it's helpful to kind of evaluate and see which lever or 2 your school needs to focus on. I think to do all 8 is nearly impossible. So that's something where if you're looking for a place to start, there's that. So that's one sort of big picture strategic way to look at this. For folks who are saying, okay, that's great, but give me a takeaway that's really going to be helpful that I can use right now as I'm headed into this year. I would say look at our Ride to Independent Schools report. There's one in particular section where we talk about authentic engagement moves the needle. Families value their connection and interactions with admission and enrollment professionals and being on campus. So when we looked at both the qualitative and quantitative responses in the ride, we found that authentic campus engagement that moves the needle in both prioritizing school options for that particular student who's applying, and also eliminating other possibilities. So when we found this out, because we asked families, what are your top 3 or 4 factors that you consider when you're thinking about, am I going to continue to consider a particular school? And in order, it was campus tours, shadow or revisit day events, sitting in on or attending a class, and interviewing with someone in the admission or enrollment office. So I say that in that's something where that's actually a great data point that a lot of heads have taken to faculty, especially before revisit days. Given the time of year we're in now, probably we're looking more at open houses or having maybe families visiting this spring who are looking at applying either this summer or next year. But those kind of interactions are really important. And we know that often, it's our faculty members, our staff, those are our brand ambassadors, even when they're out in the community. So some of those areas of focus, even that can help move the needle as schools are looking at their enrollment efforts.
Thank you for sharing. That's so interesting. I noticed when you were talking, you didn't mention open houses though as one of those engagement opportunities with that parents listed, right? It was tours and stuff like. So where does that? I'm throwing this out there, but that age-old question of, should we host an open house or not? Like, is this informing, could potentially be a good, maybe discussion for leaders to have this summer as they're planning out their fall?
It's a good question, and one that often I feel like when I talk to folks in enrollment and senior leadership teams, some of the feedback anecdotally that I hear a lot is we feel like it's almost either another place where families feel like they have to come to campus if they're interested, to let us know, even though they've already been on campus for an interview, a tour, they know they're applying, they still need to come. Or I think also I've heard from schools of the families want an additional time on campus. It's a big commitment for families to say, okay, is my child, or do we see our child here? Does my child see themselves here? And where I would go with it is, first, I would say that overall in the RIDE report, families engage that in-person interaction. They want that. That is something that they do very much value. I would say the second part of that is it's important to evaluate what is the ROI on your open house every year. How many families are you yielding who came to your open houses throughout the year? Are you doing a survey with families to figure out what is missing from our open houses? What do we need to be more of? Because also the feedback we've heard from the RIDE report was that sometimes a campus visit can also, in a revisit day, things like that, they can deter families from enrolling. And all that to say, of course, there may be just not a good match there. So you may actually be preventing some future retention down the road. So it's not always a bad thing. But for most schools, if you have admitted a student, you want them coming to that campus or that school, you want them enrolling. So I think it's important to also take a look at what's most useful with the open houses and any sort of campus events, because we know it is also a lot to ask of faculty. It disrupts the day. We know we've heard a lot of that from faculty and staff who have to do that. And yet at the same time, I would stress that if heads or enrollment folks, if they're having trouble getting faculty on board as they prepare for these things, there's a lot of great data points on this in the RIDE to Independent Schools report that should absolutely be shared out on why the faculty and staff play such an important role in prospective families and their experience on campus.
I love touching on the fact that you need to also do your own research, right? That this information is big, broad data, which may or may not particularly apply to your school. So whether that's inducing panic or reassurance, either way, looking at doing your own research specifically for your school is a good point to be made. One more question about this, all the data that you've gleaned, is there anything that really jumped out and surprised you?
I would say one that maybe isn't necessarily surprising, but one that we've gotten mixed feedback that we've shared data points that's come out of our new report. We did a second portion of the report that actually was more of a conjoint analysis. So it was actually a trade-off, basically, where we had these school A and school B, these mythological schools, and we tested these 8 different factors with families, where basically we had like 2 or 3 different versions of each. And what we did was said, okay, school A or school B, and they would look down all of these and say, okay, yes, school B is what I would pick. School A is what I would pick. And it was just try to get at this, what are families really looking for? This sort of mythological perfect school. And this particular section of the report, we focused in on families who had students who were applying to grades 9, 10, and 11th grade. Because we wanted to we felt that would be helpful, especially as we know there are more than 8 factors that families are considering when they're looking at our schools. So it helped us narrow that down a little bit. And what was interesting when we look at the average of what families said what really influenced their decision the most was basically this idea of college or university outcomes. That's still driving enrollment decisions in those upper schools, those independent schools, those 9 through 12th grade schools. And I think again, this may not be as surprising to folks, but the fact that this even weighed heavier for families than looking at things like access to high quality academics, that was something that was a little bit surprising. And I think it can be a little bit disheartening, as we know some schools have been trying to change that narrative around college or university matriculation. And yet what it does show, if we're looking at the data, that showing those outcomes to prospective families, and even for current families as you're looking at renewal, is going to be really important. So things such as college and university lists, where students are going. It's that idea, it's more about that idea of families want to be able to imagine that their children are going to have those choices, if you will. And that's sort of gleaning over. It's not getting too deep into that specific data, but I think that was a section that's probably been, even when I've presented this spring, and there was a group of heads I presented it to, I think there was a little bit of a gasp from the audience, if you will, of, oh my gosh, wow, this is a little bit shocking. So I think that's probably one thing I would point out that was interesting that we found from this report.
Yeah, that is so intriguing because I do know a lot of schools have started kind of move away from, really that, we're producing to go to these types of colleges and universities and moving towards a more holistic, social, emotional, and academic platform. But so I can see where seeing that data could be a little bit shocking. And I too am kind of surprised because I was thinking like the trends were maybe not moving heavily towards that. So thank you for sharing that. That's really
well, and
helpful.
what's interesting there too, Aubrey, is if you look at, there's the first section of our report where we asked families for those, what are your top factors that you're considering, right? And that was not the top factor when we asked them to list. Access to high quality academics was number one, right? But then in the next section, and again, this is now also sorting for just those students applying 9 through 12 there, we forced families to make a choice. And so this is almost another key takeaway from the report, in a way, quite frankly, is sometimes when you ask families in a different way, they may actually give a different answer. And it's not necessarily they're being sneaky or trying to hide anything. It's just when forced to make that decision, a lot of research talks about that, suddenly that decision-making process that might be slightly different. And I would say that what's interesting for us at EMA when we looked at that, because that's the first time we've done a conjoint analysis in any of our surveys and with families. And so we kind of geeked out about it. We were actually pretty excited. But what's fascinating even is as schools are looking at surveying families, or they're looking at asking questions every year, and especially when you think about things like retention, sometimes the way in which we ask things may get some different responses from parents. So I would even say that that's something to consider as schools are looking to get that kind of feedback, whether it's from prospective families, families who did not choose the school, who did choose the school, who are, hopefully going to be re-enrolling. That's another piece that's interesting to take into account.
That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I want to transition us to a part of our podcast where we ask a little bit about, we are the Mindful School Marketing Podcast, so mindfulness is in our name. So I'm curious, like, as a podcast, we explore mindfulness in its many roles in school, leadership, and marketing. Like, how do you personally define mindfulness, and how do you see it influencing your work with schools or how schools approach enrollment?
I love this question. It's making me be mindful right now, actually. So I love that you're asking that. Mindfulness to me, I would say, is being present and fully engaged in what's happening in the particular moment, which I have to admit I am not the best at. Great example, actually, is even I went for a run this morning. I live in Denver, so we're now at this point in the year where the sun is actually up at 5:30. So whether you want to sleep a little later or not, I'm up. So I went for a run this morning. And the first half of my run, I found that my mind was just swirling with, okay, I've got this meeting today, that meeting today. I've got, I'm traveling on Friday. Am I ready to go with X, Y, and Z? And in some ways, that's great because it helps me process. But I got to that halfway point and I said, oh my gosh, I'm not even getting the relaxation benefits and I know some people are probably like, you're relaxing when you run. How is that possible? But you kind of zone out a little bit. And so I started doing silly things like, okay, look at the tree. Look how that's swaying. Look at that adorable little golden retriever over there. And just being more mindful and present and just sort of, it helps me relax and just be and appreciate everything around me, which I think is a lovely practice that, again, I need to do much better at. For work, I would say it's the ability to actively listen and understand the current landscape and being fully present. That's really important. And I guess what I mean by that is we are fortunate to collaborate with our members. They are thoughtful, knowledgeable professionals whose insights frequently shape our work. And much of our research, reporting, professional development, the development and refinement of our enrollment tools, this all originates from conversations and feedback that we receive from them. And this often comes out of being a good listener and just, again, being present with the members. And I mean, even from our EMLC events recently, just being able to connect with them and be in person was such a gift. And so I think that's probably where I would go with mindfulness and what that means to me.
Thank you. I agree. I have similar challenges and struggles, and the
I think a lot of us
takes
do,
over.
unfortunately.
Yes, for sure. We're going to jump into our rapid fire questions now. This first one, if you could put one book as mandatory reading in the high school curriculum, what would it be?
Gosh, I was an English major in college too, so this is really tough. First things that come to mind, I'll go with two: To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee and Night by Eli Wiesel. Those would be my two.
Thank
that I
you.
pick.
And
Yeah.
we'll add these to our good reads list that we have going. So Christina, if you want more reads, there's a whole list of books that we.
Oh, I'm definitely going to check that out, especially as I'm gearing up, hopefully, for a little bit of vacation time in July.
Oh, I hope you enjoy it.
It's in the footer of our website, so you can get a link there.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm making a note of that right now.
Okay, next rapid fire. What is one app you couldn't live without?
Ooh. The Aura app, and it's spelled AURA. It's the digital frame app. And I say this just because I use it all the time. So I'm on the road a lot, whether it be with EMA events, seeing members, seeing my family, extended family, friends. And my favorite part of the app is I can just add my photos right there. And when I get home and if I'm cooking in the kitchen or hanging out, like there are all the beautiful photos and all of the wonderful memories. And it just always makes me so happy. So it's not even an app that I really interact with in terms of being on all the time like I do others. But I would say it's probably the app that has my favorite feature because it allows me to see all those great pictures when I'm home.
Wonderful. What are you reading right now?
I just picked up a copy, I haven't started it yet, of 10 to 25, The Science of Motivating Young People by Dr. David Yeager. It's a great read from what I've heard, and he's actually going to be one of our keynotes at the annual conference in Austin. So I'm really excited to read that. I always love reading the books of our keynotes before we see them present. So he's great, and he's also the co-founder of the Texas Behavioral Science and Policy Institute. So we're excited to have him.
Okay, I'm gonna have to come.
Yes, you absolutely should. It'll be fun. We've got a lot of fun things planned too.
I'm so sure. Well, it's so funny because that book is on my bedside table right now. I'm halfway through. So
oh my gosh, we definitely need to talk then offline about this.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I'm like, I've been talking to people about it all the time. I'm like, this example right here is why, blah, 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 blah is happening between 10 and 25.
Oh my gosh,
So,
I love it.
It's great. That's funny. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. What is one great piece of advice you'd like to leave us with?
And just general advice, just anything.
Yes, it could be personal, it could be professional, it could be
Okay.
like something like a motto you live by. Everyone interprets it differently.
Oh, okay, great. I like that. Ooh, practice the art of gratitude and be kind to others. That would be one piece of quick advice I would offer.
Love it.
That's a great
Wonderful.
one.
Yes. What a great way to end today. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you online?
So you can get all of my contact information from our website, which is enrollment.org. And of course, folks can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm right there. So you can please go ahead and connect with me there. I'm more than happy to chat.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank you
Christina.
again. Have a great
Thank you.
day.
This episode is brought to you by Enquiry Tracker. We believe that every inquiry is an opportunity, and with Enquiry Tracker, you can unlock the full potential of your school's enrollment journey.
Say goodbye to missed opportunities and hello to a streamlined admissions process that prioritizes efficiency and effectiveness. Discover the leading solution for school admissions and marketing. Visit inquirytracker.net to book a personalized demo today. That's inquiry with an E, tracker.net.
Thanks for joining us on the Mindful School Marketing Podcast.
We'd love it if you pop into iTunes and leave a review, 5-star preferred. Let us know how you like the show. It helps us improve what we're doing and helps others find us too.